Good afternoon. This is Dan Franklin with SIS, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our current edition of the education series for SIS. Today, we are going to show you FieldConnect, which is the field service solution for Dynamics SL. It's a wonderful solution that integrates very, very well with the Dynamics SL field service modules. Before we get to that, let's tell you a little bit about SIS. We were founded in 1996. Our headquarters are in Duluth, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. We deliver business solutions that help project and service-driven companies unify business processes and applications across the enterprise, delivering better visibility and efficiency. What we do at SIS is we are full service. We will do a current state assessment, help you do a business process analysis, and then from that, we'll help you come up with a set of requirements and a fit gap analysis to decide how well our software solutions will fit for you. And we can fill in those gaps with software design, development, and of course, our very great staff of consultants doing deployments. We are, like I said, we are full service. We can do custom application development as well. SIS, we're both a ERP, Microsoft Dynamics 365 and SL partner, and we also do CRM implementations. We can do rapid deployments for hub and spoke rollouts for large companies with regional offices, and we can do on-premise and cloud deployments. Coming up in October, please put it on your calendar to meet us in Nashville. We're all going to be, us at SIS and a whole bunch of other Dynamics SL users are going to be in Nashville from October 6th through 9 at the Dynamics SL User Conference. It's a great occasion, and we look forward to it every single year. And if you have any questions, please let us know, and we'll guide you through what it's all about. And we also are offering a coupon right now, $150 off if you go on to the I'm sure we'll get you some details on exactly where you would put that code, but we can get you $150 off your registration at this point in time. Thank you. Okay. What we're going to do now is start the webinar. If you have any assistance needs, please go to info@sism.com and we'll respond to you very, very quickly. Make sure you go to full screen mode. That means hit the maximize button on your GoToWebinar. And we are going to record this, so if you have another team member that may have missed it, we will send a link out to the recording shortly after this webinar is over. Thank you very much, and then we're going to turn it over to our presenters, John Montague and Sachi Filet with FieldConnect. Take it away, John.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that great introduction. Greetings, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for your time. And thank you, SIS, for doing all the hard work and putting this together and working with us and allowing us to share some of our solution with your customers. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Montague with FieldConnect. I'm going to talk a little bit today, very briefly, about the company, a little bit of our background. And I want to spend some time on field service. Field service is a niche for many organizations, and we're very proud to have worked with SIS, where they have taken it on as an additional specialty where they've got a lot of deep domain expertise. And we welcome that because we don't find that a lot, because many organizations that are dealing with enterprise resource planning applications, core financials, and customer relationship management don't understand a lot of the ins and outs that a large commercial specialty contract manufacturer doing HVAC, doing electrical work, doing plumbing, run into on a day-to-day basis and managing those field service organizations. In fact, historically, they've often been done on paper-based systems, so we're going to spend a little bit of time on that. But before I go there, this is all we do. We've been doing this for a long time. We've got hundreds of happy customers and thousands of users using the FieldConnect solution. And what that solution really does is, if you think about a typical commercial specialty contract company, there's many areas outside of this, but it's a lot of different verticals. And those verticals might encompass large commercial HVAC companies, large commercial electrical companies, large commercial construction companies with some of these divisions doing this type of work. And And they all run into different issues. But if you think about how most organizations are built and how they're organized, it's usually around a core ERP system or core financials. That's what's running the business. And as many of you know, is putting one of these systems in can be a difficult process. And working with the expertise of specialized partners like SIS makes that process a lot smoother. And part of the reason is it's difficult to do. You have to really think about all your processes. And some of those workflows and work processes may need to change. And one of the great things about working with a good partner is they can help you understand those workflows and those work processes to get the maximum value out of the software. And it again, can be a challenging process, but done right, there's tremendous business benefits that come from that. And one of the things that we do well is we integrate very tightly with Dynamics SL to make that solution extension of our product in the field talking directly back to core financials. What does that mean? If you look at the day-to-day operations of a typical organization with a field service group, they've got a bunch of men and women out in trucks doing work. But what is their workflow? How does that start, and what does that look like? Well, quite often, sometime around 6:30 or 7 a.m. every day, they're lining up outside the company dispatch window or inside the dispatch office, and they're picking up their clipboard, and their clipboard's often filled with a stack of paper. And each piece of paper usually represents an assignment and or a work order. And on that work order is going to be a customer, an address to go to, and a problem list. Cooling's not working, got a water leak, heat's not working, not keeping up to temperature, all these different things. And so these will be broken out and often in many organizations still today manually dispatched. So those papers are printed off of a system. Could be accounting, it could be a one-off solution, could be a spreadsheet, could be a Google sheet. We've kind of seen the full spectrum here. And they're handed out, and those techs go off to their day. And what do? They're out at a customer site solving a problem. Sometimes they need material to solve that problem. Well, is that material on the truck? Do they have to go to a supplier and pick that up? If they do, how do they account for that, and how do they track for that? At some level, they're doing it by hand, marking pieces of paper. That tech might finish that day. They may have had 6 assignments that day. They may have had 10. But each additional assignment they complete is additional revenue for the company. And the more efficiently they can do that, the more productive that they can be. And historically, when that's all paper-based, think again about that process. At the end of that day of doing those 9 assignments, they go back to the company, back to the dispatcher, and they've got a big stack of paper with a bunch of their notes on it. That dispatcher then has to go through all that paperwork, check it, check the time, how much labor was involved, how much travel time was involved. Does any of that labor fall into an overtime category? Does any of that labor fall into a category that's tracked by a particular union wage or union capability? All of these different things run into that and need to be tracked. Is a foreman tracking that above them and signing off on it? Are they tracking their travel time? Are they charging for travel time? So all these different extraneous extensions of business processes that go out in the field, we capture and manage and bring back to core financials. And those are the different ways and different modules that we do that. Now, if you think about that business process one step further, it goes back to dispatch. They check everything. They double check the labor. They count that, see if there's any discrepancies, call the tech, work through that, get that back. Many hours to do, if they've got 15, 20, 30, 40 techs, think about the amount of manual process and hours they're doing that just to double check everything to make sure it's correct. When they do go through that process, then that paperwork has to go somehow magically from that dispatcher or the dispatch room and get over into accounting. And then when it goes to an accounting, it's gone through one sheet at a time, and most often it's being rekeyed back into the financial system. So if you start to think about the math of that, let's say you've got 40 techs, each one of those techs is averaging 8 to 9 calls a day. Think about the paperwork that's getting rekeyed into the financial system and the opportunity for errors and miskeyed strokes and things of that nature. Then after it gets into the financial system and is probably checked yet once again by another supervisor, then they've got the ability to start generating invoices and sending them out to customers. that often could be 2 weeks has expired since that actual tech was out performing that work, could be 3 weeks in some organizations, could be 4. So then the invoices are going out. Those invoices are generally going to go out net 30, which means the customer's got another 30 days before they're going to cut a check and send it back to the company. So now you could be at anywhere from 5 weeks to 8 weeks from the time that that work was actually done to revenues coming into the company. And as we all know, cash flow crunches can kill businesses. So one of the value added segments that we bring to that process is you look at these different areas, whether it's our Field Direct customer portal, our Field Access work order and time reporting app, getting quotes out in the field to a customer to do work, adding onto the work that was originally done. The work order said, check this, you got out there, it was different, the customer wants you to do this, that, and the other thing. Adding that, having the ability to take pictures of that, add it to the work order, keep track of it, manage those crews, track that time and track that labor, and then get it all back into financials the same day. So that literally, depending on the business process of the organization, they could be generating invoices that day or the next day to going out to the customers, cutting out 4 to 6 weeks, increasing the cycle time to cash back into the business, which can greatly increase the bottom line of any business. Now, that's a high-level overview of how many field service organizations at work. Each one of them is a little bit different, might have a little different area that they're going to talk to. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into a high-level demonstration talking a little bit about those processes and showing them how they work in our application. But one of the important things to keep in the back of your mind is it's a tightly integrated solution into SL. It's not a separate application that's talking off of its own databases and then syncing once a week back to SL. We do a direct read and write to the Dynamics SL database in core financials and accounting, so that you're getting as close to real-time connection that you can get without syncing, without exporting, no CSV export and CSV imports, comma-separated values in spreadsheets for those of us who have had to do systems integration in this fashion. It's all integrated. This gives you a highly configurable and flexible system to make the field service organization be managed and work the way that makes the most sense for your business. Even to the extent that sometimes the field service personnel are going into an attic or down into a basement or into a mine, and there's no connection. And so we've got an automatic built-in offline mode where they can go in and still do their work when there is no internet connection. So it's agnostic, works with any system that can support a browser, works anywhere, and where these field service personnel often have to go, where guess what? There is zero internet or very sketchy internet connections, and still do on the app, come back up when they get back to the office or and run, and they get a connection again, press a line, and that little piece of it will automatically sync right then and there. But it gives tremendous additional capability to those field services. So what I'll do is walk you through a demonstration where we're going to talk a little bit about different pieces and how they work together and how they might work for your organization. And just think about the workflows that you go through and the service processes that you go through. And I think you'll see some very interesting ways in which FieldConnect might be able to add some value to your solution. So as we do that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sachi to bring up the product live and go through some of the functionality and how we integrate with SL. Sachi?
Thank you, John. Good day, all. This is Sachi Pillai. I'm on the product team for FieldConnect. And as John mentioned, we're going to go through the live demo here. And just on the screen, to give you context behind the workflow and what we're going to be looking at, the primary focus is going to be on the top three. The first one being the Field Direct customer portal. Effectively, we're going to take you through the process in which a customer can submit a request, view requests, etc. The Gateway portal, which is designed for your dispatch team within the organization, again, web-based, being able to deploy this remotely onto any browser that's on a laptop, a mobile device, like a tablet or phone, and of course, the technician application, which is Field Access. So those are the primary focal points. There's a lot to digest in here, so that is why we wanted to divvy it up like that. We will touch on the project elements because, fair enough, we do have several customers that are integrated with the project module, and they have teams out there working on projects. And then again, as John pointed out, you do have a quoting piece as well, implying that you could have a customer requesting service, but they want to get some type of authorization out there before you perform the work. With that said, let's go ahead. I'm going to jump into the product. And right now, I've brought up the web interface for our applications. And like I said, I'm going to go through that process from the definition of the customer portal over through to the technician portal. So what you're looking at right now is Field Direct. And here we go. We have our username and our password. So in here, you're gonna have your customer. So my example is going to be a customer called Aaron. So Aaron logs in, and the reason why he is in the customer portal is at this point to submit a new request. Now again, this is just a workflow. Whenever we deploy this product, it's going to be designed around the processes that make sense to the organization. So in this element, we have Aaron. The landing page that Aaron has in here is going to allow him to view the sites that are available to his organization. And within the site, he can view the detail behind the site. And what the detail behind the site does is it gives him a view of open calls or the status of calls that he has out there. So in terms of exposure, what we're doing right now is we mentioned this tight integration with SL. So we're exposing the data that you're seeing directly from the SL application. So in this case, you have these service calls, and the status of these calls right now are new calls that we put in there. You can view any equipment that is tied to my site, and of course, we also expose any invoices that the customer has out there as well. So those are a few details behind what the customer has access to. And again, driving through this, like I mentioned, you can drill down into the detail, and what you see behind the detail is that the top elements, which again, if you think through the SL field service interface, this is effectively what we're broadcasting via this web interface. And this becomes relevant as we go through the Field Gateway and the technician portal as well, Field Access, where you'll see that the equipment and any notes that we put on the equipment, any notes that we put on the service call, on the problems that you have out there, all those are translated and made available to the customer as well. So the key thing to remember behind this, it's not a one-size-fits-all, it's configurable. So these elements that we are showing you, for example, the attachments, that is an option that a customer can have access to. And then what we will do is we will decide based on the organization's requirements what we will expose or not. So again, we do have some tight security behind this, again, making sure that we follow the requirements for the organization. So that's the service call detail there. So I mentioned the reason why we logged in this manner is because Aaron has a new request. So Aaron comes in here and he says, okay, I have a situation. So in this case, he says, that's the site. And again, he has a selection of the sites and the date I need the service. So again, I'll leave it as a default date. And let's say in this case, we're going to have some type of issue with our cooling system. So let's just say we're going to have a cooling system issue. And he puts that in. It's requested by Aaron. That's, of course, the phone number. So what happens is this is a request. So the key thing about this request is that it goes into a queue. And now the benefit of the queue is that the dispatcher is going to be the next person in the chain that's going to view these requests and convert this to a service call. Now, just to give you some context behind this, we mentioned from the security perspective, Aaron, with his organization, has the ability to request service and submit these service requests. But you might have a situation where you have other customers that have greater needs. So you could have a situation where a customer might not just want to request service, but maybe we're going to grant them the ability to process these service requests. What that means is that we can have a customer convert a service request into a call. Now, the reason why we might want to do that, it could be an arrangement. We have a situation where one of our customers would be responsible for several of their, so basically like a subcontractor system. They're going to be responsible for several other locations. So what they can do is they can submit a request and they can process those requests and convert them to calls as well. So effectively performing some of the dispatching role outside the organization. So in this case, like I said, for this particular customer, Aaron, that's the sequence of options that he had available to him. The report builder would be effectively coming in and viewing the data in some type of report format. Again, like you can see, we have a couple of filters in here, and then you can generate a report behind some of the data. And what you have over here is that the ability that Aaron can view some of these transactions that are sitting out there, either as a PDF, you can export this to Excel, and you can again go through the processing. So in addition to the views that are available on screen, you have the ability to go through and generate reports as well. So just to take this one step further, what I mentioned was that in terms of the configurability and the permission, I'm going to try logging in as a different customer. In this case, I've logged in as a customer, which is Starbucks. And what you'll notice is that in addition to requesting service, I mentioned you can have the customer process service requests. So what you can see in this case is that requests have come in, and what the customer can also do is view these requests, and from here they can convert these requests into service calls. Now, the idea behind creating a service call is that at this point the transaction is created within Dynamics SL. So again, the queue is maintained outside of SL just for, again, security, manageability. You could have somebody sending a request that might not need somebody to come out there, not quite a service call requirement. So again, we'll see what makes sense for the organization. So that there is to take a request, convert it into a call. That's an option that you have. And then again, in this case, a permission that we've allowed this particular customer is to create the service call. So just to give you kind of a breadth of what our customer portal looks like, that in essence gives the customer a few options to either view transactions and of course to submit transactions to us. Moving forward to the next point in the chain of activities. So I'm going to log out as the customer, and I'm going to go into our dispatch portal, or the gateway product as we call it, so Field Gateway. So in the gateway product, what we're going to do over here is think through the roles and responsibilities of our dispatchers. So I've got let's just say a user in here called our gateway user. So I'm going to log in as a gateway user, and what I'm presented with is the jobs that we have out there. So these are all the service calls, and what you also see is that a calendar view. And what this calendar view is doing for us is giving us the ability to view what the assignments are for our technicians. And then beyond the assignments, what you notice is that we've done a little bit of color coding behind the assignments, and each of those is contextually related to some type of activity. So let's just look at this in a little bit more detail, and thereafter what we're going to do is look at those requests that were submitted by the customer and how we can convert those into calls. So in this case, what you notice up on the left is that you have these dispatch groups. So how our customers use that right now is to manage their technicians. And what you notice is that if I'm an organization that performs activities around, let's just say, electrical work, HVAC work, and fire activity, so what you can see is that I've maybe broken up my team. So the technicians that I have out here could be in one or more of these groups. So as I click through these groups, what you'll notice is that the list of technicians changes. And based on the change of the list of technicians, what you'll notice is on the right-hand side is we now see their assignments. So going through in this case, I've chosen the HVAC team. Notice that the list is limited. Another method that our customers use this on is maybe geographically. So you could say that, this team is responsible for calls on this coast or the other coast, or in this county or another county, as well as skill sets. There's various ways you can manipulate skill sets on either individual calls or within teams, so you have that level of control as well. So in this case, what you'll notice is that if I go through and I look at these assignments that we have out here, the first one that has kind of a blue highlight on it, I'm going to hover over it, this little pop-out that's giving us a little bit more information. And what I want you to take note of is the status. And if you look at the status of this particular assignment, it reads assigned. And what I'm going to do now is move over to a different assignment, which is the one that has a green highlight. And you take note of the status right now, which is work. So here you have something that is work in process. And then as well, you have something with yellow highlights, and you'll see that is a status of hold. So what we've done is visually allow the dispatcher to not just see what is out there for the team, but also understand what status these calls and what's the team working on. Now, these colors that you're seeing on these particular calls, they're driven by the status that the technician will place these assignments on as soon as they start working on a particular problem out there in the field. So when we get into the technician portal, which is field access, what we will do is we will touch on the various statuses that are associated with the problem, and then you'll see the color coding in there as well. So everything lines up pretty nicely. The other element I was going to point out is the view that you have. Up the top, you have options, which is a 1-day view, a 7-day view, and I suppose it's self-explanatory in that manner. So if I'm going to choose a 1-day view, that's going to pretty much give me, as you would see, the 1-day view of that. And then again, the 7-day view will be to push that out further. So again, it all comes down to how I want to go about planning my team, planning the activities, etc. Another element of note is this availability in data. So like you can see in this case, what we've done is we've tied back to availability of the technicians so that you can see in this case an individual unavailable, so therefore I'm not going to assign calls, or maybe somebody called in unavailable. So what you will make sure you do is you can easily reassign their assignments to different technicians. The reassignment would work by virtue of, you notice when I hover over a particular call or problem, I can simply drag that from one to the other. So this drag and drop capability is pretty reactive. What has happened at this point is that you have that particular problem now reassigned to a different technician and is now available on the queue. These assignments that you see back here will update real time on the technician's board. So that's something we will touch on as well. Within this, you also have, if I right click on that, you have an option to notify the technician. So again, a few options are messaging. You also see a messaging tab up here, which we will touch on as well. When we made a real-time change like this, if you want to notify the technician beyond what's going to appear on their board, maybe a text message to their phone, maybe an email. So however we've configured this notification for our team, that will go out there as well. So there's a few times that level of control. And then a few more things to talk to you. You have different ways to manipulate the view again. So beyond just the tech groups, you have filters. And like you can see, we've taken key elements that have come along through our history and expertise in this product to determine as to what makes sense. Like I said, there's different ways. I only want to see problems with specific status, so I can limit my board to that. I only want to see calls with specific status, I can limit my board to that. And then the other elements you can find in here is something called unassigned. So unassigned talks to when we create new problems and new calls out there. Initially, they're going to show up on the screen, and you can see we have some date controls behind these calls that were created. And then assigning these to our technicians is again going to be that similar drag and drop capability. So like you see, I'm going to hover over the problem in this case, and I can simply drag that and assign it to my technician, and that pretty much is good to go. So that technician now has the assignment up on their particular board. So that's kind of the functionality we have behind the calendar view and what we can do with it. Going on to that service request I mentioned. So the process from which our customer had come in and had submitted a request. So it's going to be the one that we have highlighted over here. So you can see I've submitted a request for 312, and I said it was going to be a cooling issue. So right now, requests come in, I look at it, I validate, okay, good. It's a solid request. I need to get somebody out there to get the job done. So when I click on that plus, what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, now I want to take that particular request that's out there, and I want to convert this into a service call for my team. So if I'm looking down here, here's my customer. So you can see whatever the customer submitted is going to be in there. I can put in some more detail behind this particular call that's coming. So this is all controls that I have. Now you can see the additional screen options and what have you. So in this case, it's going to be an air conditioning issue, giving us the call type. And as I work my way down through this process, what you will also note is that a few of the fields are highlighted with this red asterisk, meaning those are required before I can submit this. We also have some controls around, if there's a PO number out in the field that the customer submitted to us, we can put that in. If we have some primary tech assignments, so if you're using primary tech functionality within SL, we support that as well. And then again, like you can see in this case, there was a salesperson associated with this account, so we have that back there. And then beyond the call, which is kind of the call header information, you now have the problem detail. So effectively, this is the assignment that the technician is going to be working on when they get out there. What I'm going to do for the moment is I'm going to leave the technician unassigned, because that's going to allow us to drag and drop. So I can reiterate that. A comment is going to be, check events, whatever that is. And again, whatever notes you want to add onto that particular problem. So when I hit create that call, what you notice at this point is that if you look at the background, you'll see that a call ID now exists. So 1354 is our call ID. So what this indicates at this point is that you have a real call now sitting inside of Dynamics SL. So this is that, back to the integration point. This now exists within SL. You need not have somebody working within the SL environment if they have access to the dispatch portal. Again, like we said, mobile friendly, being able to work with your tablet, work with your laptop, you now have that capability. We also support multiple assignments, so we can drill into this call details. If I want to go into the call and maybe make some more changes, I can go into the call detail, and you can see here I can go back, make more edits on the problem. Here's my call detail. I can make more changes. If I want to add additional problems in here, maybe beyond the cooling, there could have been some other issues, maybe whatever else the customer wants us to have a look at when we're out there, we can add those multiple problems in here. And then again, the rest of it is similar to what you have seen from the customer portal, details surrounding the customer, the site, etc. So all of those details are exposed not just at the customer portal, but again, they dovetail back here into the gateway product, which is the dispatchers portal. To complete this process on the assignment, I'm going to go back to my dispatch, back to my unassigned, and there's my 1354 now sitting here as unassigned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that particular one, and I can go ahead and reassign that to one of my technicians. So that's pretty much the process that we flow. These particular assignments, you'll also notice that we have controls behind how we can change the estimated duration. And this is, again, all part of our planning. This is definitely not part of the billing element. It's giving us the ability to say, hey, you know what? I've allotted enough time for the technician to get on site, get the job done, and move off to the next particular job. So that's the controls that you have there. Touching on a few more elements behind the controls that the dispatcher has before we jump into the technician's portal is going to be some additional controls for planning. So you can see that dispatch portal was more kind of a daily, weekly view. But then if you want to take it a step back, maybe kind of zoom out at a monthly level, you can see that we can view these assignments that we have out there for our team, and then load, kind of balance the load, see as to what's upcoming, do our planning behind this, more tools and planning around our scheduling. So you can see that in this case we have some options behind how we want to sort, filter, search our list, etc. So these three, I would say, surround our dispatching and our planning. A few other callouts that are of note is a map tool. Map is pretty robust in here. We have several things on the map that are kind of pertinent. So let's see what we have. So if I'm looking at my date range in here, so right now let's just say if I look at what's coming up on my map. So let's maybe change this to the next couple days, so I can refresh that. And then what my map does is it shows me right now kind of a graphical view. Again, I've dispersed some calls across the country in this case. You can see that it's indicating by virtue of this of the symbol where we currently have service calls scheduled, and that's based on the date range, of course. So again, you have your filter functionality. You can filter by different call types, etc. So this is giving you some planning tools. as my techs go in and get on site and start logging in and working on the activity, you will see that we also have some tracking behind the technician geo coordinates, and we'll plot them on the map as a little red truck as well. So we have some controls behind giving you a visual indicator of the dispersion of these calls as well as the locations of these technicians. So that's the map functionality, and you have some controls behind how you want to view all of that. Going through what we saw right now was that conversion of a service request into a call. But if you have a dispatch organization that is taking new call requests by, let's just say, email or by phone, you can, again, handle that within this realm. You can manually click on new call. You can come up here. There's various ways in which you can find the customer that has placed the call request, and you can find them by going into the search. What that's going to do is it's going to deliver a list of customers and sites. So you're basically going to go through here, same process, go in, fill in the details for the call header, for the problem details, and you'd be good to go. And then I mentioned as well messaging. Messaging was beyond the notification we can do from the calendar. You also have the ability to send messages directly through the portal to the technician's board in what is called field access messaging. And these are kind of self-explanatory. We can send messages via text to a technician's mobile device. So you notice what we're doing right here is that we're sending it into this email format with the domain of the cellular provider. So again, these are settings that we will employ behind the text profile. So that is kind of how that's associated to the list of technicians that we have back here. And of course, we have email support as well. So in this case, like you can see, we're broadcasting a message to the team. Again, any notifications you have out there, company meeting, any considerations to make behind, what you have to watch for, what you have to take care of by the end of the month, end of the week. You can send all those notifications out there. Service requests we touch on, which was the customer request being converted into calls. And like you saw, that request that I processed is no longer in the list. So you have the rest of the requests in here. If you want to remove a request because, like I said, it's not necessarily going to become a call, you can delete it. That's going to be your icon functionality back here. Availability I touched on, which is if somebody is unavailable. In this case, you can see somebody is out on a personal day, so you have the ability to do this. Again, please note, all this information is shared again with SL. It's not just residing within FieldConnect. And then the rest of it is basically manipulating and viewing the call that you have in the system. You can find calls. You can look at service calls by virtue of your what's out there for your customers, etc. So all these are different options you have for querying your data. The field time component we'll touch on a little bit more when we get to the technician portal. But the field time component, just to give you a kind of a flavor of what's happening, is that as technicians are working on their calls and they're submitting time, we are going to generate kind of timesheet of all the data that they're logging, all the labor that they're logging on their transactions. And what that's going to do is it's going to start flowing in here, and it can go through maybe an approval process within the organization. So that, in essence, is what the dispatch has access to, which is the Field Gateway product. And what I'm going to do at this point is move from what the dispatcher is doing. So customer submitted the request, dispatcher converted that request into a call, had created the assignment, which is the problem, assigned that to the technician, which in this case, we're going to look at maybe what's out there for this person called Lena. And then the next step is going to be, I'm going to get out of the gateway product, and I'm going to log into the technician's portal. So on the technician's portal, this is where our crew is going to go out there and it's going to log in. So I'm going to be logging in as my individual called Lena. And when I log in, this is effectively what I have out here. So in this case, these are all my calls. Like you can see, there's different options that we have out for the technician. So I talked of their board, their notifications, etc. So one of the field access messages, which is in red, is the thing that draws our attention as we log in. So this is kind of the notification we said we can send from the gateway product to the technician's board. So turn in the time cards at the end of the day was one of the notifications. I can of course clear that, so I'm good. I got the notification on that, and then of course I'm off and running with my day. A couple of things to take note of here is that we provide some pertinent information to the technician on login. So like you can see, the landing page, their home page is their assignments. What we have over here is the call header. In this case, there's one problem that I have in this for this number 1331, and I have another call 1354 with one problem as well. So these are the assignments. What we also have is the ability to expand this range. So there's a few controls that we have in here. If I go to, for example, let's just say all, you notice now there's additional assignments out there for me. So we have a few controls, and by default, you can configure how you want this to appear. For example, in this case, I just wanted to see what is on my place on my schedule for today. So I'm going to kind of, I'm a person that's doing some planning. I want to see what's out there for the next couple of days. I can do that. I want to say, hey, you know what? Did I not update something for the last week? I can do that as well. So these are definitely some controls that you have out in terms of what you have access to. We also give you some tools behind how you want to filter this list. So for example, if you look down here, we have sort orders, we have call number filters or status filter, etc. So again, what do I want to see? So if I want to say I want to filter by call number 1354, would be my example. I hit the filter. Like you can see, that's going to pretty much drive down to that particular call. Again, like I mentioned, you can filter by other indicators in here. Going through my particular problem, like I said, in this case, you have the header information. This is where I'm going. If I'm on my mobile device, I'm going to maybe click my mapping tool back here. What that's going to do is it's going to drive my mobile device mapping application. So in this case, I can get my real-time directions. I'm good to go. After the sites, good enough. That's easy to go with that. And then what I want to do now is when I look at my particular problem, I want to indicate what's going on. So I'm going to be looking at my status. In this case, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to be going to that site. So I'm going to be en route. So this is where I talked about the color coding. So that's what I have back here. What you'll notice is that beyond the detail that we have provided on that homepage, the landing screen, what you will see is that within the problem detail of here, we provide the call header information. Again, all this information was same as what you had seen from the customer, down to the dispatcher, down to the technician now. We have the service site information. You have the site email in this case, or, kind of when we said we might get out there. And then on the right-hand side of that, you have some customer contact information, etc. And again, like you can see, we've hyperlinked the phone number, just making it easy if you wanted to maybe make a call to the customer saying I'm en route, or send a text message to the customer saying that I'm on my way to get to you. A few other controls that we have for the technician from the screen are icons like you see back here, which is a history icon. What this is indicating to us is that if I want to see maybe what other work was done at this particular site, so I can look at that in a history view. If I click on that, it's going to go in, it's going to drive history behind the site. So just giving me a flavor of what I can expect when I'm out there, or what's done by other members of my team previously. So the way that we present this data is more of a report format. This report is going to be a service report style, which we will touch on later on through this process, which is kind of summarizes the detail behind a particular call and problem that we work on. So like you can see some detail behind what's out there and what we've worked on. So I'm going to go back. Let's just say I get back into my particular call, which is 1354, and I'll work my way through the details behind this. So we're tracking cause and resolution code in this case. So whatever, let's just say there was some type of fault, I can go in there, I can update that. That was the cause of the issue. So the important element to note of here is that this information is coming real time from the from Dynamics SL as well. And then as I work my way down, I go through my process flow. So the process flow for the technician is going to be kind of similar. I go through, I have notes behind what I've done on the particular problem. So I've done some testing, so I'm good to go. I can add to my existing notes. So what you see in this case is that I've timestamped that. Beyond the problem notes, I have work order notes and I have site notes, so I can get that updated as well. In this case, we said that we have one problem, but what you'll notice is that we have kind of a nested view, so giving the technician the ability to see as to whether there's other problems at this particular site. So he or she can see whether, they could be the Glenna is who I am logged in. I can see whether I have additional problems to work on the site, whether there's other techs going to be coming out here. And again, if I want to permission-wise create a new problem, I can create a new problem real time right back here. So this is what we talked about, adding work as we're going along to the same call that we're working on. Beyond that, we have other elements that we're going to be tracking. So labor. So in this case, I'm going to go out there. Let's just say I put in 1 hour of labor. I can add the labor for myself. What you will take note of here is that there's additional technicians in this list. And the reason why you have additional technicians is because we support this concept of crew functionality. So what that means is that Glenna could be riding along with several other individuals. So I'm just not performing the job myself. I'm going to be working with Ted in this case. So when I add labor, you notice that I can add labor not just for myself, I can add labor for my crew members. And the reason why we have this functionality is because Glenn is going to have a tablet, Glenn is going to have control over the call, but Ted is going to be accompanying Glenna. So Ted necessarily does not going to be putting any data against this except tracking his time, and Glenna can enter the time for him. So that's going to be the labor tracking. In addition to entering this manually, we do have some controls behind what is called real-time labor tracking, and we can get through that in terms of how we can log this labor by virtue of status changes, etc. Likewise, we have the ability to track parts in inventory. So again, what we do over here is that we can track parts by virtue of following the technician's truck, following the main warehouse, etc. So there's some controls that you have behind the parts that you have access to behind the site. So you can see this case, that part doesn't exist in any of our sites, so we don't have inventory of these items. So as you work your way down here, you notice that there's several options behind the part, behind the site that you can track. And as you enter that, you can add the part to the particular problem, which of course rolls up into that call. Beyond labor and parts, you might have miscellaneous items, and that could take the form of, let's just say a trip charge. So notice that beyond the price that's associated with it, you might have some type of cost with a trip charge. You can track a quantity, you can add that, and all those elements start to feed through. So all we are doing over here is that we're updating these elements, and what's happening in the back end is that they're writing real time into the Dynamics SL application. So where we'll see this is going to be inside that invoice detail, which we will touch on. We also support equipment. So if we had equipment associated with the customers, associated with the site, we can add that equipment to the call. We can associate these transactions with that equipment. So effectively, equipment history is maintained. So we support that functionality. John had mentioned that if a technician goes out there and goes out into the field and maybe picks up a component from the local hardware store, so whatever that is, so you maybe have some type of vendor, you picked up some type of part. What we can do over here is that we can allow the technician to say that he's picked up the individual part, and that can be created as a purchase order either within Dynamics SL, if we choose to log that information as a real purchase order, or what we can do is we can send an email to the back office. So that is some functionality behind integrating some PO functionality within the application. Notice in this case, we've allowed this particular technician to create a purchase order. So we've tracked that in as well. So beyond that, another extensibility of the product is this form functionality. So in addition to capturing data behind the call, what you notice is that we support various elements behind form functionality. This is where we can encode any forms that technicians are currently capturing, let's just say manually on clipboards, etc. We can broadcast that into the form. These are again robust HTML forms where you have text options that you can enter. You have checkboxes that you can mark. You have a dropped list that you can select from. So there's a lot of tracking you can perform in the field. Forms, etc., can also have the ability to get sign-off. So pretty robust feature and functionality behind forms. Like you can see in this particular case, we have several forms that are associated with that with this particular customer and available on their site. And what we can do is we can type forms to call types, etc. We do some tracking behind inspection reports. So, if that's pertinent, I perform an inspection, I can capture a report behind what I'm tracking. And then a couple more things to touch on is attachments. This is giving us the ability to, let's just say, capture, let's just say photos by virtue of taking pictures on site, or in this case, since I'm on a computer, I can browse, I can attach a file that's maybe on my computer, and I can make that appear up against a particular service call as well. So that's a few things that you can attach. And then finally, I mentioned that the service report functionality is one where we take all this information that we've captured on the call, and like you can see back here, we've summarized all of this into a report. And this is kind of a completion scenario where a customer can review what we've done, sign off, and we can kind of get validation. We've done the job, we accepted the signature, and then we can go and we can get that saved and emailed, etc. So this kind of completes the entire cycle behind what we have on a call. So that being the case, let me just go back in here and look up, let's just say another call that we had been working with, where we put a few more details behind it, including some attachments. So like you can see, these are the different things we can track: photos, documents, etc. So all of this data that we are capturing behind the call, what I mentioned is that it's kind of a real-time transfer back into SL. So because I've keyed more data into this call, let's just say this one ending 1331, let me go ahead and kind of give you a flavor of what that looks like inside of SL. So in this case, I'm opening up my Excel screen, I'm pulling up my call detail, and what I'm going to see over here is that I mentioned inside my service call, I have the ability to store, let's just say, attachments. So that's kind of where my attachments show up as I uploaded them from FieldConnect. They show up in my attachments. If I go back to the particular call that I worked on right now, 1354, what you'll notice is that all that detail that I'm capturing, so this particular call that I created from the request the customer entered, I captured all my detail behind it. I go into my invoice detail back here. What you will see is that in here, you have all that transactional information, whether it be the hours that have been billed, whether it be the parts, all of that is captured in here. So that kind of takes you full circle from the point of view of the request coming from the customer, through the dispatcher, through the technician, and being able to view this real time in Microsoft Dynamics SL. So that's the full cycle of the process. I know it was a little bit high level, a little bit quick, but there's definitely more breadth we talked about in terms of the product. We do have feature functionality behind tracking data around our projects, around our project time. We talked about being able to create quotes out in the field, and with our quote process, we kind of have a workflow behind looking at the quotes that a technician can create out in the field, and we have an approval process that gets signed off, etc. So this is kind of the breadth of the product. So at that point, it's about 7 minutes on the clock before the end of our hour. So let me pause and open it up for questions and turn it back over to John, see as to whether we have any other comments on this.
Well, let's also bring in SIS in case there's been any questions that have come in through the webinar that they would like to answer or have us address. Any questions from anyone in the audience?
I see one here that references that time component. So actually, let me go back to the application and look at the. Give me a second.
Oh, I've got a couple now. Done with that.
So if I go to the application here, one of the elements about was being able to track this time. I mentioned that, and I said that real-time capability behind what's being logged in by the technician. So what I mentioned was that as we go through the process of logging in the time, we have that showing up real time on this field time report, as you would. In this case, like you. So with Glenna, what I done was I logged an hour's worth on this call, and that shows up in the timed report. I mentioned that if you're going to get your product, you'll see that. And the purpose of this, we allow them to go and make sure that they've captured all the time of the day, time of the week, and again, making sure that, of course, whatever we're flowing into payroll is kind of properly maintained as well.
Okay. There's one question that came in that I think Dan answered to the audience, but I'm going to just repeat it just in case anybody missed it. There was a question about, do I need to get an additional Dynamics SL license for every tech if we have a bunch of techs? And Dan responded that no, that SL is licensed concurrently, that if techs need to log into SL client for whatever reason, they would consume one of the concurrent licenses. And then we do have a question on how long would an implementation, if they decide to go, if they already had SL installed and they wanted to add FieldConnect, how long does an implementation take? What does it look like? What does it cost? And what problems might they run into?
So in that case, I'd say that a typical implementation we see could run anything from 4 to maybe 12 weeks in a year. And again, from our perspective, when it comes down to implementing the application, number one is that we're following the configuration, we're following the workflow from SL. So the only time we see the project take a little bit longer is because what some of the customers do is, and it makes sense, in addition to simply rolling out this mobility piece, what they're trying to do is improve process flow as well. So as they're dialing in process flow, there's a few discussions that happen around that kind of extends the rollout. But in terms of the actual software side, getting the software set up, getting the software installed, getting the team trained, several weeks. If the processes are dialed in, it's going to be much faster. So it's pretty quick to get everything up and running. We're pretty knowledgeable. We've done this for a while. It just takes time to get through the guidance, get the team ramped up, get the technicians ramped up, dispatchers ramped up with new processes. That's basically what we're looking at. So I'd say easily between 4 and 12 weeks, we should be fully up and running.
And then Marshall has a question, says, can existing equipment files in Dynamics SL be accessed?
Absolutely. So effectively, any equipment that we have associated with that particular customer is going to flow directly into field access by virtue of the fact that we're reading that data from SL. So if I go, for example, into my advanced panel here, and if I go to select equipment, like you can see, I'm now reading that equipment. So if I select a piece of equipment, in this case, now what I've done is on call 1354, which was my test call, I now have that piece of equipment associated with it. So if I go down into my equipment panel, you can see now I have that equipment. I can put some notes against it. And what you'll notice is that beyond this, when I go into my parts now, and I want to add a part, I can not just add a part, but I can associate that part, that I use that part on this piece of equipment. So you can see that kind of exposes that association between the equipment for the customer and the particular service call.
Okay, and then I'm having a tough time reading this one. Hold on.
I got it. It's
we perform multi-day.
I got it. For multi-day projects, how does FieldConnect handle those within scheduling? From multi-day up to multi-month projects, I'm sorry. How does FieldConnect handle those within scheduling? Is that capability there? Multi-day or multi-month projects? I guess those would be service calls or projects, I'm not sure.
So right, so the projects, in terms of you're talking about the scheduling aspect of it, or the time entry piece of it?
So it looks like David Flowers, he clarified. He says large projects. So I guess this would be using FieldConnect and the Dynamics SL service module to interface with the project controller and have that happen there. So scheduling service calls throughout the course of a large project. How does that work?
Right. So in terms of the scheduling, our scheduling revolves around the call management, and that's what we have out here. Project functionality, works down to having those projects available, and then the technicians can, of course, pull those projects up in their view and capture the time alongside it. So that's effectively how the technicians are interacting with the project.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think we're answering the question. If not, please feel free to re-ask it. But with many organizations, they've got both a service side of the business, what I often refer to as the break fix or preventive maintenance side, and they're tracking that, and that's more core to most of the functionality we showed you. But if you're in construction, many of those folks would obviously also be managing and scheduling projects. And we do have that functionality and capability and interact well with SL on those. All depending where things are tracked and how your business process runs, things might tweak a little bit, but that gets into probably beyond the scope of this conversation, but we'd certainly love to have a conversation offline if you've got some specific needs that we need to talk about.
Yeah, so I mean, what I'm kind of gathering from that is using the service module to kind of use it to kind of like work orders against projects, where you'd have a project that has a scope of work, and you're managing the individual work orders against that project via the service module, and then also via FieldConnect. So we've done things like that before, and if we want to take a look at how that works, we can certainly take that offline and show you how you can utilize the service module for work orders against projects. I think we're running out of time here. I did want to make one quick comment. This is Dan Franklin. Make one quick comment about the implementation and something that you had said, John, that I do completely agree that, I'm sorry, Sachi, that you said, I do completely agree that sometimes the implementation can take a little bit longer. You have to understand that you're taking an organization that may have individuals out there in the service field that have their own individual processes. And when you're all done, you have everybody basically on the same process. So that's a good thing. And it takes time to get everybody all onto the same process. And that's really, I totally agree that sometimes if you've got some challenges there where you're going to have to get everybody out in the field to all kind of conform to the same process, or maybe a couple of different processes depending on the type of service that they're doing, versus everybody having their own process, that's going to be your challenge. But once you get it all up and running, then you have everybody on the same process, and it's much easier to measure and track, and your whole business works so much better if you've got a repeatable process. So anyway, that's where we are on FieldConnect. Sorry, we're a couple minutes over. If you have any more questions, please go ahead and email us at info@sisn.com, and we'll make sure we get your questions answered. And we'll get back to you on when we're going to have our next webinar. It should be sometime in the month of April. We'll get that out to you shortly. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Thank you, John. Thank you, Sachi, for your time today on demonstrating FieldConnect. And we'll catch you guys all later. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.